The valet opened the car door with practiced ease, offering a hand Marina didn't take. She stepped out onto the glowing marble entrance of the Worthington Hotel in downtown Dallas, the chilled November air brushing against her silk scarf. Inside, chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 little lies. The fundraiser was already in full swing, waiters drifting like shadows with trays of champagne, murmured laughter rising like perfume, and names worth millions stitched in gold onto place cards. She adjusted the cuff of her fitted black gown and walked inside. Everyone in that room knew her husband. Brandon Calderon, tech billionaire CEO of Apex Logic's hometown hero, turned national headline. He was probably already surrounded, flashing his signature grin, speaking in half-hushed brags about logistics, algorithms, and last quarter wins. The kind of man who could charm donors, mayors, and morning show hosts in a single breath. Everyone knew Brandon. Most of them had forgotten about his wife. "Marina," a voice called gently. "You look stunning, dear." It was Ruth Holloway, a board member's wife, reaching out to air kiss each cheek. Marina smiled, perfectly measured. "Thank you, Ruth. How's your daughter enjoying Stanford?" "Oh, she's stressed but thrilled. You know how it is." Ruth leaned in, whispering conspiratorially. "You've got that glow tonight. Is Brandon finally taking you on that Greek vacation?" Marina laughed softly, the way she had learned to. "Not quite. He's been busy." Ruth sighed in sympathy, patted her arm, and turned toward the shrimp tower. The exchange took less than a minute. It said everything. Marina walked slowly along the edge of the ballroom, eyes scanning the room like a private lens. She saw Brandon before he saw her. Of course she did. He was magnetic in a navy suit and white open collar, his hair perfectly tousled his posture, as effortless as it was rehearsed. Around him circled men in tailored blazers, women in polished heels, and near him, almost beside him, stood Savannah Cross, 28, flawless in a deep green dress, her smile effortless and just a little too bright. Savannah tilted her head and laughed at something Brandon said. Marina turned away before he caught her watching. She wasn't surprised. She hadn't been surprised in a long time. She drifted toward the far edge of the room, her fingers brushing the rim of a champagne glass before deciding against it. She didn't need a drink. She needed a moment. Past the mirrored bar, and behind the potted palm trees, was a narrow hallway leading to the gallery wing, quiet, mostly empty. Marina stood there in front of a portrait of an oil magnate's wife from the 1800s. The woman wore a stiff black gown and looked as if she had swallowed a secret she never got to spit out. Marina understood that look. "Thought I might find you sneaking off," said a low voice behind her. She turned. Cliff Montgomery. White hair, linen suit, always smelled faintly of bourbon and cedarwood. He was the owner of the Crescent Club, and one of the few people Brandon still respected, if only because Cliff had known the family back when they were still renting and not ruling. "You don't miss much," Marina said softly. He studied her for a long second. "That's because you don't say much." She didn't respond, and Cliff nodded, stepping beside her to face the painting. "You know," he said, "back when Brandon brought you here the first time was, 15 years ago? I thought, now there's a woman to watch." Marina's lips curved slightly. "And what changed?" "Nothing," he said. "Just got tired of waiting for you to let the city see who you really are." She turned toward him, just a breath. "Soon," she said. "Very soon." Cliff gave a slow nod, like he knew better than to ask questions he didn't want real answers to. Behind them, the music swelled again. Laughter, applause. Brandon was probably announcing a new grant or a new product line. Something generous, something genius. "He asked me to book a private room," Cliff said casually. "Investor dinner. Said he needed discretion." Marina's voice didn't waver. I know. Cliff looked at her again. You gonna be there? She turned her eyes back to the painting. I never miss the important meetings. Later that night, in the back seat of a town car gliding through Highland Park, Marina sat with her hands folded neatly over her lap. The driver didn't speak, and neither did she. Brandon had left the fundraiser early, of course, claimed he had a late call with Dubai. Savannah had slipped out 10 minutes after. Marina had smiled through the rest of the evening, made her rounds, said her thank yous. Now the silence of the car pressed in around her, soft and padded like insulation. When they arrived at the gates of their mansion, she didn't go inside right away. Instead, she stood in the driveway, looking up at the limestone facade. Perfect lines, perfect windows, perfect staging. Inside those windows were rooms she hadn't entered in months. The kitchen was used by the housekeeper, the dining room by caterers. Her real life, her real work was behind the small frosted glass door at the far end of the hallway. The room Brandon jokingly called her little think tank, as if it were cute, as if it were harmless. She stepped inside, locked the door behind her, and pulled off her heels. The room was quiet, humming faintly from the hard drives tucked into the cabinet wall. 2 large monitors glowed on her desk. On them, market, data, legal briefs, coded timelines, real-time investment performance. At the center of it all was a folder labeled Silvergate Holdings, Apex Logix Transition Plan. Marina sat down, opened it, reviewed the timetable. T-7 days. Her phone buzzed. Jordan Investor Dinner confirmed. Friday, Crescent Club. 7 p.m., Brandon RSVP'd with +1. Marina typed, good, have Denise prep the documents, and tell Cliff I'll be arriving 20 minutes late. I want them seated first. She stared at the screen for a long time, then leaned back. In the far corner of the room sat an old brown box, worn and taped 3 times over. It had moved with her from her grad school apartment to the early rental condo with Brandon to this house. She hadn't opened it in years. Marina stood crossed the room and opened it. On top, a spiral notebook, faded cover, yellowed paper, notes in her handwriting, sketches of a logistics flow system, a revolutionary model, her original algorithm, the one Brandon had borrowed to pitch his first round of seed funding, the one he had called a spark of inspiration from a dinner conversation, the one he had never returned. She flipped to the last page where her final equation had been circled in red ink. The margin note she wrote still visible. Build it quietly. Let the data speak. She ran her finger over the words. Outside, the garden lights turned off on a timer. The house fell into its nightly silence. Inside, Marina smiled. The reckoning had already begun. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. Savannah Cross stood in front of the full-length mirror in the executive washroom of Apex Logix Tower, adjusting the soft silk collar of her blouse for the 3rd time. The emerald green fabric hugged her figure like it was made for her, because it was. Brandon had it sent from Milan 2 weeks ago with a handwritten note, "Wear this when we win." Love, B. She smiled faintly at the memory, then exhaled through her nose and looked herself in the eye. This wasn't nerves. This was preparation. Today, Brandon was meeting with a major investor, a deal that could change everything for the company and for her. Her reflection smirked. For us, she whispered, barely audible, then turned and walked out. The elevator ride to the executive floor was quiet, carpeted, and filled with that particular scent of leather and confidence. When the doors opened, the receptionist looked up quickly. "Morning, Ms. Cross." "Morning." Lily Savannah replied with a soft smile, then kept walking without waiting to be announced. She didn't need to be. Not anymore. Brandon's office doors were open. Sunlight streamed in from the 2-story glass windows behind his desk. He stood in front of them, silhouetted phone to his ear, voice low but animated. He turned when he saw her, a slow grin spreading across his face as he ended the call. "You're early," he said, crossing the room with his usual easy stride. Savannah leaned against the arm of the leather couch. "You said we were meeting before the investor call." "We are," he said. "But I wasn't expecting you in that dress. I might cancel the meeting altogether." She tilted her head playfully. "Careful, Brandon. You mix business and flattery too well." He reached for her hand and brought it to his lips, a casual gesture he'd never risk in the hallway, but one he had grown comfortable repeating behind this glass. "I'm serious. You look like good news." Savannah glanced around the office. The oversized desk, the massive display of Apex's media features on the wall, Brandon's many awards, and let the silence stretch just enough. "Is this deal really going to fix things?" she asked finally. Brandon dropped her hand and walked toward his bar cart. "Fix is a strong word. It's more like fortify, reposition." He poured a glass of sparkling water and handed it to her. The last 2 quarters were bumpy, sure. But this investor, Silvergate Holdings, could change the game. Savannah frowned slightly. "I've never heard of them." "No one has," he said almost proudly. "They operate under the radar. Anonymous capital, massive influence. Smart money. We've been talking through intermediaries for months." "Why so secretive?" Brandon shrugged, sipping his own drink. "Some people just don't like the spotlight. Or maybe they enjoy watching people squirm before they drop the check." She watched him closely. There was something in his tone, something almost anxious underneath the bravado. "And you're sure about them?" she pressed. He turned sharply, eyes narrowing just a fraction. "I'm sure they're our best shot." She didn't push. Not directly. Instead, she walked toward the window, watching the Dallas skyline stretch endlessly. "You ever think about leaving all this behind?" she asked quietly. Brandon chuckled. "Every morning until I walk in and remember I'm king." Savannah didn't laugh. "I mean it," she said. "What if we took the payout and started something of our own? Something clean. Just you and me." His gaze stayed on her for a beat too long. "And the wife?" he asked, voice lighter than his eyes. Savannah hesitated. "She doesn't know about us, does she?" Brandon turned away, setting down his glass with a soft clink. "Marina has no idea what I actually do anymore. She plays with her little spreadsheets and charity galas. She checked out years ago. Still, Savannah said she's your wife." "On paper," he replied. The room fell quiet again. Not cold, just heavy. Savannah crossed back to him, gently placed a hand on his chest. "I just want to make sure we're not going to blow this." Brandon covered her hand with his own. "We won't," he said firmly. "Once this deal is locked, we're unstoppable." She nodded, but her eyes drifted to the framed photo on his desk, a much younger Marina and Brandon at the company's ribbon cutting. Marina wore a white blouse and a quiet smile. Savannah's jaw tightened. "Why don't you get rid of that?" she asked, gesturing at the photo. Brandon looked down at it, then gave a slow, tired smile. "Optics," he said. "Besides, it doesn't matter. That part of my life, it's fading." Savannah looked at him carefully, measuring every word, every glance. There were moments like this one when she wondered how much of what he said was for her, and how much was still just performance. Still, she reached up and straightened the collar of his jacket. "Then let's make sure the future looks better than the past." Across the city, Marina sat in her home office reviewing the preliminary analysis Denise had sent over. Her glasses rested on the tip of her nose as she made small, meticulous notes with a mechanical pencil, never pen. Nothing she wrote now was ever permanent until it had to be. Jordan appeared on the monitor. Silvergate's equity hold in Apex will cross 15% after next week's filing. You'll have legal grounds to call for board audit review. Marina nodded. Perfect. Keep it quiet. We've also confirmed the final dinner guest list. Brandon listed himself and one guest. No mention of Marina Calderon. Marina looked up calm and clear. Then let's not mention me either. Not until the right moment. Jordan smirked. Cliff's still holding your seat. He knows what's coming, Marina said, but not how hard it will land. She leaned back, looking not at the charts on the screen, but at the pale blue Texas sky outside her window. There's something about public humiliation, Jordan, she said slowly. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be true. Jordan nodded once. Should I notify Denise? Marina paused. No, not yet. Let Brandon enjoy his throne for a few more days. Let her wear the necklace. Let them both think they're winning. She reached again for the old thesis notebook on the shelf, thumbing it open with the kind of care one reserves for fragile things. Her eyes landed on a diagram labeled Distributed Load Optimization Protocol. Still the backbone of Apex's system. Still uncredited. She closed the notebook gently. He built his empire on my silence, she said quietly. And now Jordan asked. Marina turned back to the screen. Now I've stopped being quiet. The sun dipped behind the Dallas skyline, casting a soft amber glow over the Calderon estate. Inside the house was quiet, too quiet for a home of that size. Brandon wasn't home yet, and Marina knew he wouldn't be. She stood in the kitchen barefoot on cool tile, her hand resting on a wine glass she had yet to fill. The caterer had left hours ago. The marble countertops gleamed. The housekeeper had placed fresh lilies in the foyer. Everything looked perfect, but the silence pressed in around her like a second skin. She moved through the house, slowly past rooms she never used anymore. The theater room, the gym, the lounge with the baby grand piano no one played. These days her world began and ended in the small enclosed study at the back of the house. When she opened the door to her sanctuary, the air felt different. Cooler. Focused. Here the rest of the house didn't matter. She sat at her desk, the glow of her monitor washing her face in blue light. She didn't check email. She didn't scroll the news. Instead, she opened a folder titled Phase 3. Final Trigger. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. There was still time to walk away. Still time to call it off. Still time to simply vanish, take her billions, disappear into some quiet coastal town, and forget Brandon Calderon ever existed. But then she thought of the night she found the pitch deck on his laptop. The one he had sent to investors before Apex ever had an office. The one that opened with her algorithm rebranded under his name. Not a whisper of credit, not a footnote, not a thank you. He hadn't stolen it out of malice. He had stolen it because he never believed she'd do anything with it. That was the worst part. She clicked the first file. Market data, projections, legal memos from Denise, a list of Apex's vulnerabilities, asset positions, debt exposure. And at the top of it all, a countdown. 4 days until the investment dinner. She leaned back, exhaled. A soft knock came at the door. She turned. Brandon. He leaned against the frame, casual tan phone, still glowing in one hand. Didn't think you'd still be up, he said. I'm always up late, she replied, her voice even. He stepped inside, looking around the room like he always did, as if he still didn't understand what it was she actually did here. What is all this anyway? He asked, gesturing to the monitors. You running a spy agency in here? She smiled faintly. Just my portfolio. He laughed lightly, not unkindly. You and your little projects. She turned her chair slightly so she faced him. I heard you have a big meeting coming up. His eyes flicked to hers. Yeah, Friday. Private dinner. Major deal. Big enough to bring Savannah. He paused. Just half a beat. Then he grinned. Who told you that? Marina shrugged. Dallas is a small town. Word travels. Brandon crossed the room, perched on the edge of her desk. His tone was breezy, but she could see at just the faintest tension in his jaw. She's helping me with presentation strategy, he said. Of course, Marina said. He studied her face. You're not upset? Why would I be? I don't know. Some women might find it complicated. She held his gaze. You haven't asked what I'm working on. Brandon smiled. Honestly, I don't think I'd understand it. You used to ask. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Back then you were different. You had all this fire. That sharp brain of yours, always trying to fix everything. She didn't speak. And now he continued. You've built this whole world for yourself in this room. I don't even know. That was your choice, she said softly. He leaned back. Maybe. Or maybe you just got so good at hiding it, I stopped looking. A long pause stretched between them. Then Marina asked, Why did you marry me, Brandon? The question was quiet, unexpected. Brandon blinked. What, I'm serious. Was it love or was I just convenient? He laughed, once disarmed. Of course it was love. You were smart, gorgeous, ambitious. I admired that. She looked at him, unblinking. And when did the admiration stop? Brandon sighed. Come on, Marina. We've grown in different directions. That's not a crime. No, it's not. She agreed. But theft is. He looked at her sharply. What's that supposed to mean? She smiled gently. Nothing. Just thinking out loud. He stood, straightened his jacket. Well, try to get some sleep. You spend too much time in here. As he walked to the door, she called after him. Brandon. He turned. She stood now, arms crossed. If you were ever going to take me seriously, now would be the time. He looked at her for a long moment, searching her expression. Then he chuckled and shook his head. You always did have a flair for the dramatic. The door clicked shut behind him. Marina sat back down. She picked up the pen, signed the final instruction memo for Denise, and whispered to herself, No flair, just facts. 2 floors above the Apex executive suite, Savannah sat in the company guest apartment, an open-plan luxury unit Brandon had temporarily leased for out-of-town investors. It had become her private space now. She scrolled through her calendar, eyes catching on the word dinner, the Crescent, 7 p.m. Brandon had promised this was it, the beginning of everything. The dinner where they'd make it official, not just the deal, but their future. Her future. But something about Marina's name came back to her. The way people in the office still lowered their voices when they talked about her. The way no one quite knew what she did, but still walked on eggshells around her. Not from fear, from respect. Savannah had asked Brandon once. He said, she's brilliant, but she wasted it. Doesn't know how to move in the real world. But Savannah wasn't so sure anymore. She opened her laptop, typed Silvergate Holdings into a search bar. Nothing. No press releases, no photos, no executive bios. She searched again, Silvergate plus Apex Logics plus investor. Still nothing. But when she filtered by shareholder data, a name appeared buried in the footnotes of a finance blog. S. Calderon. Silvergate Holdings. Savannah's breath caught. S. Calderon. She stared at it. No photo. No confirmation. But her fingers hovered over her phone. And for the first time, she wondered if she'd been part of someone else's story all along. Not the main act. Just a very well-dressed placeholder. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The Crescent Club shimmered beneath the early evening light, like something out of a dream, white stone, soft jazz, drifting through the courtyard valet staff in crisp black vests, moving in rhythm like choreography. It was quiet elegance, with just the right hint of intimidation. Inside the Regency room had been sealed off for a private client event. Brandon had insisted on the exclusivity. He said it made the deal feel more serious, more intimate. He said power should be tasted before it's signed. He believed that. Savannah followed a maitre d' through the main corridor, her heels clicking softly against the tile. She wore the dress Brandon had chosen, a dark burgundy satin clean neckline, long sleeves, subtle shimmer under light. It clung in all the right places. She'd worn it for headlines that hadn't yet happened. When they stepped into the private room, she exhaled. The space was breathtaking. Long mahogany table, crystal stemware, candles lit but subtle. A fireplace crackled at the far wall beneath a towering portrait of a Texas oil baron. It was in every way Brandon's theater. She turned toward him. He was already talking to a pair of sharply dressed lawyers, one man, one woman, both of them radiating quiet precision. "This is Ms. Cross," Brandon said, waving her over. "She's my strategic advisor. Most of the pitch is her idea." The male attorney nodded, once expression unreadable. The woman barely glanced up. "Noted." Savannah's smile flickered, but she recovered. "It's lovely to meet you both. We're honored to have this conversation." The woman finally looked at her. "And you are formally authorized to speak on Apex's behalf." There was no warmth in the question, just clinical interest. Brandon interjected. "She's with me. I trust her judgment." The woman offered a flat, practiced smile. "Trust is admirable, but legality is measurable. Ms. Cross, I'll need a digital authorization filed by close of business." Savannah's throat went dry. "Yes, of course," she replied quickly. "I'll submit that tonight." The two attorneys sat. Brandon took his seat across from them. Savannah hesitated for a moment, just a beat too long, then eased into the chair beside him. Outside the double doors, the soft music of the club filtered faintly through. Inside the room, it might as well have been a courtroom. Brandon cleared his throat. "So, I understand your principal will be joining us shortly." The male attorney nodded. "Ms. Calderon is expected within the hour." Savannah blinked. Brandon didn't seem to notice. "Excellent. I thought it was a man. But either way, we're thrilled. My teams run every scenario, and I believe we've created something that could be mutually transformative." The female lawyer opened a leather folio. "Before we get to projections, I'd like to clarify Apex's current burn rate as it pertains to the requested injection." Brandon smiled broadly, leaning back in his chair. "Understandable. We've been in growth mode, heavy expansion, some front-loaded cost, but we've just pivoted the logistics model, and I'm looking at a net operating loss of $38 million this quarter." The woman interrupted, sliding a document across the table. Savannah stared at it. Her stomach turned. Brandon's smile faltered, then returned. "There's always context for numbers. Our user acquisition is up," she finished. "But retention is down. You've tripled user attrition in under a year, and your new contracts are not guaranteed past Q3. So the question is not whether you're growing, it's whether you're bleeding." Savannah could feel the flush rising in Brandon's neck. "Are we here for a deal or a dressing down?" he asked tightly. The male attorney responded this time. Calm. Cold. "We're here to determine if your company is a wise investment. So far it resembles a sandcastle." Savannah reached for her water glass to buy a moment. The room felt smaller than it had moments ago. Brandon leaned forward, eyes hard. "I was under the impression Silvergate was committed." "We're committed to due diligence," the woman said. And then, as if on cue, the door opened. The maitre d' stepped in. "Apologies. Ms. Calderon has arrived." Brandon stood quickly smoothing the front of his jacket. Wonderful. Please send her in. Savannah rose too, trying to regain her composure. She checked her hair in the reflective glass of the wine cabinet. But when the footsteps echoed on the hardwood, something inside her stilled. A woman entered. Tall, composed, in a tailored midnight blue suit that fit like armor and whispered wealth with every step. Her hair was pulled into a clean, low twist. A single pearl earring glinted under the chandelier. She carried nothing but confidence. Savannah's throat tightened. It was Marina. But not the version she remembered. Not the polite background wife from holiday parties or charity galas. This Marina walked in like she owned the room. Brandon's smile froze. What the Marina she didn't answer. She didn't even look at him at first. Instead, she nodded to the attorneys, who both stood in unison. Miss Calderon, the man said, "Thank you for joining us." Marina turned to Brandon now. Her voice was smooth, calm, precise. "You requested a meeting with the principal of Silvergate Holdings. That's me." The silence was instant and complete. Savannah's glass slipped slightly in her hand, the sound of it catching on crystal. Brandon's voice cracked slightly. "You know, that's not Marina, what—" She walked past him and took her seat at the head of the table. The chair they had left vacant, the one positioned between power and judgment. She folded her hands. "We'll get to the financials shortly. But first I'd like to correct a few assumptions. 1, this is not a negotiation. 2, this is not a rescue. And 3, I did not come to be persuaded." Brandon stared at her lips, parted disbelief, turning quickly to something else. Savannah looked between them, realizing too late that she was in a story already halfway told. Marina's gaze drifted to her now. "Savannah, is it?" She nodded, unsure what to say. "I admire loyalty," Marina said, "even when it's misplaced." Brandon moved, pulled out the chair beside her, tried to find footing. "Marina, listen. This isn't the place." She finally looked at him. Full eye contact. "This is exactly the place," she said. "You just didn't expect I'd be the one sitting at the head of the table." She turned to the attorneys. "Please proceed. Let's discuss the status of Apex's assets and whether they're worth saving." The attorney opened the next file. Brandon didn't sit. He didn't speak. He stood there like a man suddenly realizing the stage he built was not his after all. And the show had just begun. The silence outside the Crescent Club's private room clung to the hall like fog. After the tension, the revelations, the slow, polite dismantling of Brandon's image inside that room, the rest of the building felt unnaturally calm, like a theater just after the final curtain drops. Marina stood alone on the club's back terrace, her breath misting in the cool air, the Dallas skyline twinkling beyond the iron railing. Inside, the attorneys were finishing their review. Brandon hadn't spoken in 20 minutes. Savannah had said even less. She needed a minute, a real one. She wrapped her hands around a cup of black coffee and leaned against the stone balustrade, letting the chill steady her nerves. Her heart wasn't racing. It was focused. Every movement inside that room had gone exactly as planned. But that didn't make it easy. Footsteps behind her. She didn't turn. "If you've come to argue, save your breath." Brandon exhaled. "I've come to understand." Which is new for me, apparently. She stayed quiet. He stepped closer, but not beside her. Still keeping a little distance, maybe out of respect, maybe out of guilt. "I didn't know he said that you'd built all of this, that Silvergate was yours." "That was the point," she replied calmly. "You never thought to ask." He let the words sit between them. "I thought you were done." "With all of it, with algorithms and models, and I was never done, Brandon," she said, her voice quieter now. You just stopped seeing me as someone who could build." He looked down. "Marina, I didn't steal your work." She turned toward him slowly, her eyes sharper than her voice. "Yes, you did." He blinked. "You copied the core model I wrote in grad school. You pitched it as your own. You presented my data. You didn't just use it, you erased me from it." Brandon looked out at the skyline, jaw tight. I thought we were building something together, that we were one team." She laughed softly, not with joy. "You were building something for yourself, and you assumed I'd be happy cheering from the sidelines." He looked at her now, really looked at her. And so this tonight was revenge. "No," she said. This was a correction. He didn't speak. She let the silence linger, then continued. "When my father died, I was trying to hold myself together. You knew that. And while I was flying back and forth to El Paso to handle probate and hospital bills, you were making pitch decks with my equations. You didn't even tell me you presented until the deal was already closed." He swallowed hard. "You said it was fine." "I said I was tired," she corrected. "And you heard what you wanted to." The wind picked up slightly, sending a loose strand of hair across her cheek. She tucked it behind her ear. "I started Silvergate 6 months later," she said. "With my inheritance, quietly, cleanly. You were busy with interviews and ribbon cuttings. You didn't notice." Brandon nodded once, barely. "Why not tell me what would I have gained from telling you?" He looked down again. "You could have left," he said. She tilted her head. "Why would I leave something I helped build? You clearly didn't want to stay with me." Her expression softened. Just slightly. "I did want to stay with you, Brandon," she said. "That was the problem." For a long moment neither of them spoke. Then he asked quietly, "Is it over, the company?" she asked. He hesitated. "Us." She took a sip of her coffee, eyes scanning the skyline. "Doesn't matter what I say. You already left long before tonight." Brandon's shoulders dropped. "I never wanted to hurt you." She turned back toward the doors. "That's the thing about hurt. It doesn't wait for intention." Inside, the attorneys were finishing the asset review. Denise gave a nod through the glass. It was time. Marina turned back to Brandon. "I'm acquiring the controlling interest, effective immediately. Silvergate will oversee a full audit. And yes, Savannah's salary will be part of that review." He flinched but didn't fight it. She stepped past him toward the door, then paused. "You still have your home, your name, your bank account. I could have taken everything." He looked at her, jaw clenched. "Why didn't you?" She met his eyes steady. "Because I wanted to be better than what you expected of me." Then she pushed open the door and walked back into the room where her attorneys waited. That night, Savannah packed in silence. The dress, the shoes, the skincare bottles still sitting neatly in the guest bathroom. She didn't cry. Not yet. She didn't even fully know what had just happened. All she knew was that the room smelled like someone else's perfume now. She zipped the last compartment of her overnight bag and looked around the apartment. The space felt borrowed like it always had. Her phone buzzed. "Brandon, I'll call you tomorrow." She stared at it, then turned the screen face down. Everything was shifting, but she couldn't name the direction yet. Not for him, not for herself. And somewhere deep beneath the sting was a flicker of something else. Relief. At Marina's home, Jordan sat across from her in the study reviewing the final reports. Denise had already left for the evening, but the room still carried the weight of everything that had unfolded. "Everything's signed," Jordan said. "The board will be informed tomorrow. You're the new majority chair. Apex Logics is officially under Silvergate's umbrella." Marina nodded. She didn't smile. You okay? Jordan asked. Marina looked at the monitor in front of her Apex's org chart, now fully redrawn. I'm not sure yet, she said honestly. Jordan hesitated. What happens next? Marina leaned back, thoughtful. Next, she said, we rebuild. But this time, on truth. Jordan closed her laptop, gave a small, respectful smile, and stood to leave. As the door closed behind her, Marina looked up at the framed diagram on the wall, her original algorithm printed and framed years ago. For so long, it had been a symbol of betrayal. Tonight it was something else. Proof, not just that she'd built it, but that she could begin again. On her terms. In her name. The boardroom at Apex Logix felt different now. Same walls, same skyline views, same polished walnut table. But the air carried something new, quiet, watchful, taut with change. The weight of a company in transition. Marina stood at the head of the table, the same place Brandon had occupied for the last 6 years. Today, it was hers. She didn't sit. Instead, she scanned the room, 11 board members, some she'd known since the company's infancy. Others newer brought in during Brandon's expansion wave. All of them now waiting to see what kind of leader she would be. Jordan stood near the back with a tablet in hand, eyes steady on Marina. Thank you all for being here. Marina began, voice calm but firm. I know the last 48 hours have created some confusion. Let me be clear, Silvergate Holdings now holds a controlling interest in Apex Logix. She paused, letting the statement settle. There were no gasps, just the soft creak of leather chairs and a few exchanged glances. This transition was not abrupt. It was necessary. One of the board members, Arthur Vance Gray, suit old school, leaned forward, threading his fingers. Ms. Calderon, some of us were unaware that Silvergate was even in negotiations. You weren't supposed to be, she replied. That's how Brandon preferred to operate. A few eyebrows lifted. Another voice, this time from a younger board member, Renee Liu, one of the few who had publicly questioned Brandon's strategies in recent months. What's the goal now? Renee asked. A sell-off merger. Marina shook her head. No, I don't want to dismantle this company. I want to restore it. Arthur raised a brow. Restore it to what Marina's gaze didn't waver. To what it was built to be: innovative, ethical, resilient. Before it became a brand built on shortcuts and charm. There was a long pause. Then slowly one board member nodded. Then another. Jordan stepped forward and placed a document folder in front of each person. These are the proposed structural changes, department audits, leadership reviews, and new reporting protocols. Arthur glanced through his. You're planning to freeze discretionary spending? Yes. Terminate all influencer contracts? Yes. He looked up. Including the cross account. Marina met his eyes, especially the cross account. A flicker of something moved across Renee's face. Respect, maybe. Marina straightened. You'll have time to review the full proposal, but understand this Apex is no longer a one-man show, and it never should have been. Later that afternoon, Marina walked through the lower-level innovation lab, once her favorite part of the company. Back when whiteboards were covered in ideas and not marketing slogans. Back when meetings happened with coffee-stained laptops and not branded wine tumblers. A few engineers looked up from their desks. Some did double takes. Others pretended not to notice. She didn't mind. She was a ghost to many of them. A name on the board, a story they'd heard in whispers. The founder's wife who disappeared. Now she was walking among them. She stopped in front of one young woman, maybe late 20s, dark hair pulled back in a low bun. The woman looked up, slightly startled. Hi, Marina said gently. I'm Marina, The woman straightened. I know who you are. What's your name, Layla? Layla Tran. Marina smiled. I saw your design notes on the dynamic routing update. They're sharp. Layla blinked, caught off guard. You read them. I read everything Marina said, especially the things Brandon didn't. A moment passed. Then Layla's face softened. Thank you. You're welcome. Keep pushing. You've got something. As Marina walked on, she heard Layla exhale quietly, almost like a weight had lifted. Hope was subtle like that. That night, Marina sat alone on the back patio of the Calderon estate, wrapped in a light shawl, a glass of Cabernet beside her untouched. The pool reflected the moon in gentle ripples. The garden lights were dimmed. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. She heard the faint click of the back door opening behind her. Brandon. He stopped a few feet away. I didn't know you'd be home tonight, he said carefully. I live here, she replied, not looking at him. I know, He paused. The office feels strange without you, or with too much of you. I'm not sure which yet. She finally looked over. You were the one who locked me out. I didn't mean to, he said. I just kept moving forward. I thought that's what success required. You confused momentum with vision, she said quietly. He sat down a few feet away, leaving space between them. That was new. Is it strange, he asked, that even after everything, part of me still wanted you to be impressed? She looked at him now, eyes softer than before. I was. Once. He took a breath. I meant what I said. I never wanted to hurt you, I know, she replied. But you did, not with one action, but with 1,000 omissions. He nodded slowly. Then, after a pause, he asked, What happens to us now? She turned her eyes back towards the pool. I don't know yet, she said. But I know this forgiveness and trust aren't the same thing. He didn't respond. The night settled in deeper around them. I'm not angry anymore, she added after a moment. But I'm not yours anymore either. Brandon looked down, his voice quiet. I don't know who I am without you. That's something you'll have to figure out, she said. A long pause passed. Then he stood, nodded once, and walked back inside. Marina stayed. She listened to the night, to the leaves rustling gently in the breeze, to the quiet rhythm of something breaking and something rebuilding. Not a collapse, a clearing. Rain tapped gently against the windows of Marina's office, soft, rhythmic, almost meditative. It was rare in Dallas this time of year, but today it felt like a reset, a pause between storms. She stood in front of the tall glass panes, sipping tea, watching the city blur through streaks of water. Behind her, the office was still filled only with the hum of her monitor and the soft rustle of pages as Jordan prepped files at the conference table. It had been 4 days since she took control of Apex. 4 long, quiet, measured days. The media hadn't caught on yet. Internally, the transition was being labeled a strategic restructuring, sterile words for a seismic shift. The public announcement was scheduled for next week. Until then, Marina worked quietly. Precisely. Cleaning house, from the inside out. Jordan looked up from her notes. Board's asking about your availability for next Thursday. Strategic vision presentation. Put it on the calendar, Marina said without turning. I'll have the outline to you by Monday. Also, Jordan said, pausing, you've had 2 calls from Layla Tran. Marina turned. Did she leave a message? Just said she'd like to speak in person. Sounded nervous. Marina nodded. Schedule something. Tomorrow morning. Jordan made a note, then glanced at the digital wall display. Oh, and there's one more thing. Marina raised a brow. Denise forwarded something strange this morning, Jordan continued. An email from Savannah Cross. She's requesting a meeting. Marina said nothing for a moment. She said it's personal, Jordan added. No lawyers. Marina considered it. What do you think she wants? Jordan's expression didn't change. Closure, or clarity, or a chance to rewrite the ending. Marina exhaled slowly. Schedule it. The following morning, Savannah arrived at Silvergate's private office in Uptown, early, unsmiling, dressed like someone who had something to prove. Gone were the bold colors and luxury accents. Today she wore a sleek black pantsuit, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. The shift was noticeable. Jordan showed her into the conference room. Marina waited there alone. Savannah stepped inside, carefully closing the glass door behind her. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, voice low. Marina gestured to the seat across from her. "Have a seat." They sat in silence for a moment, the hum of the city muffled behind thick glass. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually agree to meet," Savannah began. "I was curious," Marina replied. "You usually prefer to operate behind Brandon." Savannah's jaw tightened, but she didn't rise to the bait. "I'm not here to justify anything," she said. I needed to face you." Marina folded her hands. "Why now?" Savannah looked down for a beat, gathering herself. Then back up. "Because I didn't know the whole story. Not until that night. And once I did, I couldn't pretend I didn't." Marina nodded slowly. "And yet you stayed with him." "Not anymore," Savannah said quickly. "Was that his choice, or yours?" Savannah's voice was quiet now. "Both, I think." Silence settled again, heavy, but not hostile. "I never intended to be a wedge between you," Savannah said. "I believed what he told me, that your marriage was just a formality, that you were distant, uninterested." Marina's expression didn't change. "And you wanted to be the exception." Savannah looked away. "I wanted to matter." The vulnerability in her voice was unexpected. Not rehearsed, not manipulative, just raw. Marina leaned back slightly, her tone softer. "I understand what it's like to want to be seen," she said. "To believe someone when they tell you you're different." Savannah looked back at her, surprised. "I know what Brandon can be like when he's chasing something," Marina added. "He makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. Until the next room." Savannah's eyes glistened, but she held steady. "I didn't come to ask for forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." Marina nodded once, slowly. "You don't owe me an apology," she said. "You owe yourself one." Savannah blinked. "For believing that love should make you small," Marina continued. "For staying quiet when you knew something felt off. For letting someone else define your worth." The words hung in the air, like truth finally spoken. Savannah looked down again, breath shaky. "Thank you," she whispered. Marina stood not coldly, but with the quiet finality of someone who had moved beyond the chapter. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Savannah," she said gently. Savannah stood too, paused for a moment, then nodded. And with nothing else to say, she walked out. Later that day, Layla arrived at Marina's office holding a thin folder and a nervous energy she couldn't quite hide. Marina smiled. "Layla, come in." They sat by the window away from the formality of the desk. "I didn't mean to bother you," Layla said quickly. Just after our conversation in the lab, I felt like I should show you something." She opened the folder and pulled out a printed set of code modifications, along with a diagram. "It's an alternate flow model," Layla said. "I started drafting it after I saw how inefficient the new Apex framework was. I didn't want to overstep, but—" Marina skimmed the pages. Her eyes lit up. "This is good," she murmured. "It's not finished," Layla said quickly. "But the core routing logic could reduce latency by 30% if we reconfigure the I know Marina interrupted, smiling. I can see it? Layla sat back, visibly relieved. Marina looked up. Why haven't you submitted this to leadership before? Layla hesitated. They don't really take unsolicited innovation. Unless it comes from upper management. Marina nodded slowly, her voice low. They will now. Layla looked at her, something between hope and disbelief flickering in her eyes. Marina reached for her notepad and began making notes. I want you to expand this, she said. Build out the simulation, run the numbers, present it to the team next Friday. Layla blinked. You mean, me present it, yes? Marina said, smiling. You wrote it, you should own it. Layla's face lit up, not just with excitement, but with something deeper. Recognition. Value. I won't let you down, she said softly. Marina leaned back. I know. As Layla gathered her things, Marina watched her closely. It was the beginning of something. Not a replacement, a renewal. As the door closed behind her, Marina turned back to the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were thinning. And for the first time in a very long while, the light was coming through. The invitation came on a Tuesday. Heavy cardstock. No digital calendar link. No reply all. Just a simple envelope slipped under Marina's office door with her name written in bold, clean lettering. Inside was a handwritten note from Preston Hale, a longtime Dallas investor and one of the most powerful quiet voices in tech infrastructure. He was hosting a private dinner at his home in Highland Park. 8 guests only. Marina read it twice, then looked up at Jordan. He never does this, she said quietly. Jordan glanced at the envelope. You're on his radar now. Do we know who else is going? Jordan nodded. A few names leaked. 2 CEOs, a research dean from Rice, and Dominic Chen. Marina's eyebrows lifted. Dominic Jordan gave a small smile. Looks like someone's making room at the table again. Thursday night arrived with that particular chill that follows a winter sunset in North Texas. Marina chose a deep emerald dress, structured but soft, with a subtle shimmer beneath the patio lights. Her hair swept into a low, deliberate knot. Not flashy, not loud, but impossible to ignore. The Hale estate was what people politely called classic old money, nothing showy, but everything precise. Manicured boxwoods, limestone columns, staff who knew not to hover. Marina was the third to arrive. Preston greeted her at the door himself. Marina, it's good to finally see you without a PR team in the middle. She smiled. And here I thought you liked them for protection. He laughed. You'd be surprised how little protection money buys these days. They stepped into a warm, low-lit drawing room where soft jazz played, and the fireplace gave off just enough heat. Marina's eyes swept the room and landed on Dominic. He stood near the window, a glass of something amber in hand, deep in conversation with the dean from Rice. His profile caught the firelight, sharp calm, effortlessly curious. He looked over. Their eyes met. A flash of something, surprise, recognition, maybe even memory. Then he gave her a small nod, just enough to acknowledge, not interrupt. She took a slow breath and turned toward the small bar, giving herself a moment. It had been years. They hadn't parted on bad terms, but not on finished ones either. Their timing had always been a step behind, first him, with his startup in Austin, then her move to New York, then Brandon. Life had folded them into different lanes. Until now. She hadn't expected to see him. Not here. Not tonight. Preston's voice pulled her back. Drink just water, she said. He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. Within minutes, the room filled. The air shifted. Conversations began. Soft laughter, thoughtful tension, old connections reawakened. The kind of evening that wasn't about food, but about watching who listened. When dinner was announced, Marina found her place card across from Dominic. Of course, Preston always played chess with seating. As she took her seat, Dominic looked up, his voice low and amused. "I was wondering if you'd come. You knew I was invited. I made sure of it." She tilted her head, surprised. Dominic smiled faintly. "I've been watching Apex from a distance. When I saw Silvergate step in, I had a feeling it was you, but I couldn't confirm it until last week." Marina studied him, her voice measured. "And what made you reach out now? Because it's not every day someone reclaims what's hers, with style." She looked down briefly, then back at him. "That's generous. Some would call it vengeance." He leaned in slightly, voice soft but firm. "That's because they don't understand the difference between destruction and correction." Her breath caught for just a second. Then she gave a quiet laugh. "You haven't changed." "And you have," he said, "but not in the way people think." They paused as plates were set in front of them. Warm aromas, thoughtful portions, every detail considered. As the conversation at the table drifted toward AI ethics and data privacy, Dominic leaned in again. "I meant to reach out before now, after the divorce news leaked, but I wasn't sure if it would have helped." Marina looked at him. It might have, or it might have felt like someone revisiting a wound. He nodded, taking that in. "But I'm glad you did tonight," she added. His eyes softened. "Me too." After dinner, guests migrated toward the library, a room that smelled of cedar and aged leather. Marina found herself near a low-slung sofa, nursing a sparkling water, when Dominic joined her again. He stood close enough for warmth, not assumption. "I have a question," he said. "All right. Is this just the beginning?" Marina looked at him, amused. "Of Silvergate, Apex. You." She sipped her drink. "It's a rebuild." "From what, from silence?" she said simply. He nodded, thoughtful. "I'd like to be part of whatever you're building next." She met his gaze fully now. "Why?" "Because I believe in what you see when everyone else looks the other way." Her heart didn't leap. It settled, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. She looked away before she said something too revealing. The night wasn't over, and she wasn't ready to write this chapter in ink. But she did glance back at him once more, before walking toward the main hallway, and when she did, he was already watching her. Not with hunger, with respect. It had been a long time since she'd felt that from a man who wanted something more than her resume. A long time since she believed it might be possible again. Outside, the air had warmed slightly. The rain had passed. And for the first time in what felt like years, Marina didn't rush to her car. She walked, slowly, purposefully, like a woman learning finally how to move without looking over her shoulder. 2 days later, Marina stood in the foyer of the Silvergate headquarters waiting for the elevator when her phone vibrated. She glanced down at the screen and paused. Dominic Chen. "Just landed. Got something to show you? Can I stop by?" She stared at the message, thumb hovering. There was a time when she would have overthought it, parsed every word, questioned the tone. Now she simply typed, "Come by at 4. Bring whatever you're hiding." The elevator dinged open. She stepped inside. The doors closed slowly, and for the first time in weeks, she smiled to herself. By the time 4 or so hit, the sky had turned soft with a late afternoon haze. Marina's office glass walls' warm light, quiet elegance felt like a place suspended just above the rest of the world. Dominic arrived with his sleeves rolled and a leather folio under one arm. No pretense, no entourage, just him. Jordan raised an eyebrow as she buzzed him through. Friendly visitor Marina didn't look up from her laptop. Potential collaborator. Jordan smiled without commenting and stepped out. Dominic walked in and set the folio on the coffee table. "I come bearing ideas," he said. "Good. I'm in the mood for smart." He opened the folder and pulled out a set of printed slides and diagrams. "It's a hybrid infrastructure platform. Modular deployment scalable designed for adaptive latency environments. I've been sketching it for months, but now I think it actually has legs." Marina leaned in. "Why bring it to me? Because I need someone who understands systems and stories. You see both." She scanned the designs, already mapping connections in her head. "This could be the future of distributed learning models." "That's what I think," Dominic said. "But I don't just want to pitch this to investors. I want to build it deliberately, ethically. And you think I can help with that?" He gave a quiet smile. "I think you're the only one who can." She looked up, eyes catching his. The intensity in his gaze wasn't performative. It was clear. And steady. "You realize what you're suggesting," she said slowly. "I do," he replied. "And I'm not in a rush. But if we're both starting over, maybe this is something worth starting together." Marina leaned back, considering. "You'd have to work under my terms. Full transparency, clean books, clean tech." He didn't blink, agreed, no shortcuts, never again. There was a pause. Then she said softly, "I don't know what this is yet. You and me." He nodded. "We don't have to know. We just have to build it one honest step at a time." The quiet that followed wasn't awkward. It was intentional. Grounded. Marina finally exhaled, feeling something shift, like the beginning of trust. "Leave the slides," she said. "I'll call you tomorrow." Dominic smiled. "You always were the smartest in the room." "I still am," she said, but with a tease. He headed to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. "I meant what I said, Marina, about starting something real." She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she just nodded. Once. And he left. That evening, Marina drove home with the windows down. The air was crisp, the city alive with December energy. Lights glittered along downtown buildings. Couples strolled the sidewalks wrapped in coats, warm laughter trailing behind them. She didn't head straight home. Instead, she parked near the old Bishop Arts District and wandered. The streets were familiar, where she and Brandon had once come for anniversary dinners, charity brunches, impulsive nights out. But now it felt different. Not haunted, just repurposed. She stopped in front of a small bookstore cafe she used to love. Warm light poured through the windows. A woman sat inside reading a cup of tea steaming beside her. No makeup, no urgency, just peace. Marina stood there watching. She wondered if she'd ever felt that way. Truly at ease. She wanted to. She walked inside and ordered a tea. The barista, maybe mid-20s, smiled as he handed it to her. "Rough day." She looked at him, surprised. "No, actually, just full." He nodded like he understood. "Those are the best ones." She took her tea and sat by the window. No laptop, no planner, just a moment. And in that quiet, something surfaced, something small and human and brave. She wanted to be known not just for rebuilding a company, but for rebuilding herself. Not in opposition to Brandon. Not as the ex-wife or the woman behind the comeback, but as Marina Calderon. Whole, present, rooted. Back at Silvergate the next morning, Jordan walked into Marina's office with an envelope in hand. This came by courier. Hand-delivered. Marina opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper, A resignation. Brandon. No drama. No plea. Just a formal statement of withdrawal from Apex's advisory board, effective immediately. Jordan watched her. You okay? Marina folded the letter and set it aside. Better than okay. She stood, walked to the window, and looked out at the morning sun cutting through the skyline. Jordan waited. Marina turned back. Let's call Dominic. It's time to talk next steps. Jordan smiled. Yes, ma'am. Marina sat at her desk, heart steady, mind clear. No more waiting for someone to hand her a place at the table. She was building her own. The new Silvergate conference room wasn't grand, but it was honest glass walls, clean lines, light wood. No one sat at the head of the table. That was deliberate. The layout was round inclusive, built for ideas to move, not to orbit a single ego. Marina sat beside Jordan and across from Dominic. Between them were sketches, prototypes, and a whiteboard filled with data flow maps. On the far end, Layla was mid-sentence nervously explaining the adaptive pathing model she'd spent the last month refining. And if we reroute through dynamic nodal thresholds instead of fixed checkpoints, we'll reduce process lag by nearly 32% under load. Marina nodded, eyes locked on the whiteboard. Have you simulated user variance across environments? Layla hesitated. Not yet. But I ran the initial conditions through 3 test cases and got consistent reductions. Dominic leaned forward, his tone gentle but direct. Push it further. I want to see stress data, mobile latency, rural networks, full range. Layla nodded. I can have that by Monday. Marina smiled slightly. You've done good work, Layla, Jordan added, and the board noticed. They've asked you to present next quarter. Layla blinked. Me, personally, yes, Marina said. Because you earned it. Layla's eyes filled for a moment before she quickly nodded and gathered her notes. As she left, she mouthed a quiet, thank you. When the door clicked closed behind her, Dominic looked across the table. You know what I love about her? Marina tilted her head. What she doesn't lead with performance. She leads with questions. That's rare. Marina sat back, thoughtful. That's how we build different, not by proving we're the smartest, by making room for others to rise. There was a pause. Then Dominic said, You're doing that too, you know. Her eyes flicked to his. Am I? He nodded. You walked into a room full of people who underestimated you and didn't scream. You just took your seat and made them listen. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she glanced at the board, letting the praise settle somewhere quiet inside her. It had been a long time since someone admired how she moved, not just where she landed. Can I ask you something? She said, finally. Of course. If this works, if the platform launches the way we think it can, what happens to the rest of it? Your other company, your VC network, the investors who thought you were scaling up the old system. He held her gaze. I walk away. She narrowed her eyes slightly. You'd leave all of it I already have in my mind, he said. The old model isn't sustainable, not ethically, not technologically. I don't want to squeeze margins. I want to build something that can't be bought or spun. Marina searched his face. And you're sure that's not just a pitch? He smiled softly. I don't pitch you, Marina. I talk to you. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. She didn't show it. Instead, she said, Let's draw a boundary then. Before we blur anything that shouldn't be blurred. Dominic nodded, respectful. Professional lines. For now, she added more gently than she meant to. He looked down at his notes, smile returning. Understood. But the way he said it didn't feel like a withdrawal. It felt like patience. That weekend, Marina drove out to Cedar Hill State Park. No meetings, no emails. just open air and the rustle of dry leaves under boot heels. She walked for nearly an hour alone, taking in the quiet. The wind was soft and carried the smell of cedar and winter soil. It reminded her of her childhood before the algorithms, before the IPOs, before the heartbreak. She found a bench overlooking the lake and sat letting the sun warm her face. Her phone was off. Not silenced. Off. A family passed by, 2 kids chasing each other, parents laughing behind them. Not flashy, not curated, just real. She watched them, wondering what it would feel like to move through life with no audience, no expectations, just truth. And then her thoughts drifted to Brandon. She hadn't heard from him since the resignation letter. No calls, no emails, no carefully worded articles. That in itself was a kind of answer. She didn't feel vindicated or smug. She felt light, the kind of light that comes not from winning but from releasing what no longer fits. She sat with that feeling. Let it bloom. Monday morning came crisp and clear. Marina arrived early, coffee in hand, already mentally sifting through the day's agenda. Jordan met her at the door. "There's someone in your office." Marina paused. "Who, Savannah?" Marina's pulse skipped, but her face stayed calm. "Did she say why she brought a file? Said she's not here to stir anything?" Marina nodded once. "Okay." She walked into her office and found Savannah standing near the window, looking out. When Savannah turned, she looked different. Calmer, grounded, wearing no makeup, hair tucked into a clean ponytail, an oversized blazer over a knit top. Not styled, just herself. "I'm not here for long," she said quickly. "I just wanted to give you this." She held out a slim file folder. Marina took it and opened it slowly. Inside were email printouts, presentation slides, branding drafts, early prototypes of Apex's public messaging strategy. Except one thing stood out. The original campaign wasn't Brandon's. It was Marina's. Her early pitch repackaged. Word for word. Savannah cleared her throat. "I found it when I was packing up my things. I didn't know. Not back then." Marina flipped through the pages, heart heavy with the weight of old thefts. "I don't expect anything from this," Savannah said. "I just thought you deserved to have it." Marina looked up. "Why now?" Savannah gave a small shrug. "Because sometimes the only apology left is the truth." There was nothing else to say. She left quietly, and Marina stood there holding the folder, the silence like a full stop. Outside, the city buzzed. Inside, something old had finally closed. And something new, something steady and slow and good was beginning to take shape. Marina stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in her office, the early light brushing soft gold over the skyline. She cradled a cup of black coffee untouched, cooling in her hands. The city buzzed below, unaware of what today would bring. The Silvergate Apex transition was nearly finalized. The official press announcement was scheduled for noon. Everything she'd worked toward, the reclaiming, the restructuring, the slow, intentional rebuild, was finally culminating. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Not wrong, just unresolved. Her phone lit up. "Dominic Chen, you up?" She smiled faintly. "Always." He replied a second later. "Meet me before the press call, conference room C." She typed one word. "Coming." She left her office without her blazer, walked the quiet hallway, barefoot in soft flats, and turned into the smaller private conference room tucked into the back of the executive wing. Dominic stood near the whiteboard sleeves, rolled his laptop open. He looked up when she entered, but his expression wasn't light. It was focused, guarded. Marina paused. "What's going on?" He nodded toward a set of documents on the table. "We need to talk through something." Now before the world hears our big announcement. She stepped closer and looked down at the papers. Financial summaries, brand strategy outlines, term sheets, her name, his name. And she froze. There it was, buried 3 pages in, a clause from Dominic's investment network, one she hadn't seen, one that conflicted with her clean tech ethics policy. She looked up slowly. "Where did this come from?" she asked, voice calm, but clipped. "It was buried in the original partnership docs I signed months ago. I didn't catch it until I was doing a final sweep last night." She stared at him. "You didn't catch it," she repeated. "No, and that's on me. But now I need to know what you want me to do." Her chest tightened. "You already know what I want." He didn't flinch. "If I back out of the agreement, they'll pull out half the funding. Possibly more. The board will panic. The platform may not launch." Her jaw clenched. "And if you don't, we lose everything this was supposed to stand for." "I know." Silence. Heavy. Long. He stepped closer. "I didn't come here to defend it. I came to give you the facts. And the choice." Her voice cracked just slightly. "Why do I have to choose between what's right and what's real? Because we're building something different," he said softly. "And that's harder than building something fast." She looked at him, eyes shining, not from tears, but from pressure. From the weight of doing it right, again. Alone. Dominic reached out gently, not touching her, just grounding his voice. "Marina, I will follow your lead. If you say walk, I walk." She blinked, steadying. "And if I say stay," he looked at her, "then I'll spend every breath making sure the next choice is cleaner." A beat. She stepped back, collected the papers, and looked them over one more time. Every sentence, every figure, every word that could unravel everything they were building. Then, with a deep breath, she said, "We're going to delay the announcement." Dominic nodded. "We revise the terms. Renegotiate. Start clean, even if it costs us time." "Okay." She looked up finally, letting herself exhale. "We don't rush integrity." He smiled just slightly. "That's why I came to you." She gave a quiet laugh. "You didn't have a choice. I would have caught it eventually." He stepped closer, warmth in his eyes now. "I know. But I wanted to be the one who told you, not the one you had to uncover." For the first time all morning, the tension began to ease. Not because it was solved, but because it was shared. And that made all the difference. Marina gathered the documents into her arms, turned toward the door, then paused. She didn't look back when she said, "You're not just a partner in this, Dominic. You're either all in or out. There's no middle." He didn't hesitate. "I'm all in." She nodded once and walked out. The press call postponed, the platform paused. But the foundation, still standing, stronger than before. The conference room was empty now, save for the quiet ticking of the clock on the far wall. Marina stood alone near the whiteboard dry erase marker still in her hand, her thoughts racing faster than her heartbeat. She had just finished presenting the revised strategy to the board, clearly without apology. Dominic sat beside her throughout, steady and silent, letting her lead. He didn't flinch when she explained the delay, didn't interrupt when she told them why they were choosing transparency over speed. And somehow she'd watched their expressions shift. Confusion first, then resistance. But as her words landed purpose over profit values over velocity, there was something else. Respect. It was slow, but it was real. Jordan peeked her head in now. "They're talking. Some murmurs, but no panic." Marina exhaled. "Let them murmur. We'll answer with action." Jordan smiled. "I think you just redefined leadership for half the room." Marina didn't respond. Her eyes were still on the whiteboard, where one phrase from her notes remained circled, "Start where truth lives." She didn't know if she wrote it at the beginning of the meeting or in the middle of it, but now it anchored her. Jordan lingered. "You want me to cancel your next meeting?" "No," Marina said. "I need a break, not a retreat." Jordan nodded and left quietly. As the door clicked shut, Marina dropped the marker and stepped to the window. Dallas spread out in front of her, wide and warm and imperfect. And for the first time since taking Apex back, she didn't feel like she was managing chaos. She felt like she was growing something. The knock came soft. 2 taps. Dominic entered without waiting. "Hey." Marina looked over her shoulder. "Hey." He held a brown paper bag and 2 bottled teas. "I figured you didn't eat." She raised an eyebrow. "Always with the food. Old habits," he said. "Crisis meetings make me hungry." He set the bag down and pulled out sandwiches. "Turkey pesto. No onions." "Still your go-to." She blinked, caught off guard. "You remembered. Of course I did." They sat side by side on the low leather bench near the windows, eating in a comfortable quiet. The kind that only lives between people who've peeled back the layers. Dominic broke the silence. "You didn't have to defend me in there." "I wasn't," Marina said, not looking at him. "I was defending the truth. Which, for once, included you." He chewed slowly. "You know there's this moment when you're scaling a company right before it hits that next level where everything feels like it might break. And the temptation is to smooth it over. Push through. Just get to the next funding round." Marina nodded. "But if you do that, you carry the cracks with you." He glanced at her. "Exactly." She looked down at her sandwich, then back at him. "We're not smoothing this over. We're sealing it right." He smiled. "That's why I trust you." There was a beat of silence between them, soft, full. Then Dominic added, quieter, "I trust you in ways I didn't expect." She turned to him. The air shifted just enough to notice. "Are we talking business?" she asked. He met her eyes. "We were." Another pause. And then Marina stood, walked to her desk and picked up the folder Savannah had brought days ago. She turned, holding it out. Dominic took it, opened it, scanned the contents, his face darkening just slightly. "These were yours?" he asked. "My early concepts. Brandon repackaged them for Apex's first pitch to investors, claimed them as his." Dominic shook his head. "I'm sorry. I don't need sorry. I just need honesty." She took a breath. Let it go. "I spent years thinking if I worked hard enough I'd be untouchable, that brilliance would be my shield. And now I know better," she said. "Now I know my power isn't in being perfect. It's in refusing to be erased." Dominic stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You're not invisible anymore, Marina. Not to them, and definitely not to me." Her voice softened. "Then don't treat me like a symbol. I wouldn't dare." He stood in front of her now, close, but not crossing the line. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but I'm not walking away from it." She studied him. The truth in his face, the steadiness, no grand gestures, just presence. That mattered more than any promise. She nodded once. "That's enough, for now." He smiled. "Then let's build what's next, together." And as he turned to leave, she felt it something warm, blooming quietly in her chest. Not certainty, but possibility. The kind that asked for patience. The kind that stayed. Marina didn't realize how quiet her home had become until the sound of the kettle boiling seemed too loud for the space. The condo, perched 12 floors above the heartbeat of downtown Dallas, had always been sleek, minimal lines, warm woods, curated lighting. Brandon had picked the place, said it gave them space to think, to plan. Now it just felt paused. She poured water over chamomile leaves and stood at the counter watching the steam curl and rise. The city glittered outside her windows. Everything below moved with purpose. Cars, lights, late dinners. But up here, time softened. Her phone buzzed. Dominic just sent the revised term sheets. Clean. Checked twice. She smiled, then typed, "Got it. I'll read them over tonight." He replied almost instantly, "Don't stay up too late." She didn't respond, just stared at the message for a second longer than necessary. She wasn't used to gentle check-ins that weren't performative. She was still learning how to trust that kindness didn't come with conditions. Marina carried her tea to the sofa, slid the papers out of her bag, and laid them across the table. Numbers, language, terms of engagement. She traced the columns with her finger, feeling how different this all was from the world she used to live in. And then, just as she started to read, the elevator pinged from the private hallway. She wasn't expecting anyone. A soft knock followed. She stood, hesitant. Then opened the door. It was Savannah. No makeup. Hair still slightly damp from a shower. She looked fragile. "Sorry. I should have called." Marina stepped aside. "Come in." Savannah walked in slowly, arms wrapped around herself. "I wasn't going to. I kept telling myself I had no right to show up." "You don't need permission to be honest," Marina said gently. Savannah turned to face her. "I've left him." Marina blinked. "What, I packed a bag last night and checked into a hotel in Oak Lawn. I'm filing the paperwork this week." She let the words hang there like someone tossing a stone into a still lake and waiting for the ripple. Marina gestured to the couch. "Sit. Please." They both did. "I kept thinking it would get better," Savannah said, voice quiet. "That maybe if I just stayed calm, stayed useful, he'd come back around." Marina didn't speak. She knew that rhythm too well. "But after I saw that file, your file, I couldn't unsee it. What he took from you. What he built on someone else's back." Savannah stared down at her hands. "And I realized he does it to everyone, in different ways." Marina's voice was low. "That's how he survives, by borrowing shine from others." "I don't want to live like that anymore," Savannah whispered. Marina nodded, slow and measured. "Then don't." Savannah looked up, eyes glassy. "I don't know who I am without him." Marina held her gaze. "That's the beginning, not the end." Silence settled. Not awkward, just thick with everything unspoken. Then Marina said softly, "What do you need?" Savannah shook her head. "I don't know yet. Just a place to say it out loud." Marina reached for her tea, took a sip, and set it down carefully. "You said it, and you're still standing." Savannah let out a shaky laugh. "Barely. But standing," Marina said. They sat like that a while, the city still buzzing beneath them. Two women once divided by a man now bound by something truer. Eventually, Savannah stood. "I should go." Marina walked her to the door. As she stepped out, Savannah turned back one last time. "Whatever happens with you and Dominic, I hope it's real." Marina didn't answer, just gave a small, quiet nod. When the door closed, she leaned against it for a moment, eyes closed. The past was releasing its grip. Gently. Finally. She turned off the lights, walked to the window, and stood in the dark, letting the city hum carry her into the night. It was early evening when Marina stepped out of the ride-share car and into the soft, golden light of Bishop Arts District. The streets buzzed gently with live acoustic music from a nearby patio, couples meandering past art galleries, the smell of warm bread floating from a corner bakery. She hadn't planned this outing. It was instinct. A pull. After everything, Savannah's visit, the final edits to the term sheets, the emotional weight of staying true, she needed to breathe somewhere that didn't require power suits or polished answers. Dominic was already waiting outside the cafe. simple button-down sleeves, rolled hands in his pockets. No laptop, no phone in sight. When he saw her, he smiled, not wide, not performative, just a real, quiet kind of glad. "You came," he said. "You asked," she replied. He opened the door for her, and they stepped into the warm hum of the place. Exposed brick, twinkle lights, a three-piece jazz trio tucked in the back, weaving soft rhythms through the air. They didn't talk about business, not right away. They ordered tea, shared a small charcuterie board, let the evening settle around them like a soft blanket. Finally, Dominic leaned forward. "How are you really?" She studied him for a beat, then set down her cup. "I think I'm learning how to stand still." He tilted his head. "I've spent most of my life running," she said. "From expectations, toward success, away from failure. But now, I'm trying to just be here, in this moment, with myself." He nodded. "It shows." She smiled just slightly. "I've always been sharp, Dominic. I know that. I can build anything, tear it down, rebuild it better. You can," he said, steady. "But I never really let anyone close. Not truly. I thought love made you soft, vulnerable, distracted." And now she looked at him. "Now I think maybe the right love doesn't take anything from you. Maybe it gives you more." He didn't rush to respond. He just let her words land. Then after a breath he said, "I don't want to be something you overcome, or something you survive." Marina's eyes softened. "I want to be something you grow with." She sat back, heart aching in the best way, like muscles stretching after being tight too long. "You're not simple, Marina," he added, voice low. "You're layered, sharp. You've built walls for good reasons. But I'm not afraid of them, and I don't need to climb them all at once." She didn't speak, afraid anything she said would crack the moment open too wide. So instead she reached across the table, just placed her hand over his. That was enough. That said everything. The music behind them swelled, then softened again. Later, as they walked out into the night, the air cool against their skin, Dominic said, "You ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met earlier?" Marina shook her head. "We wouldn't have seen each other then. Not really. No, I had too much to prove. You were still building your empire. We would have passed each other in a lobby, nodded politely, and forgotten the moment." He smiled. "Then maybe this is exactly right." They stopped at the crosswalk. The city hummed quietly like it was listening. Marina looked over at him. "Let's not define this yet. No pressure, no labels." "Agreed," he said. "But let's not run from it either." The light turned. They crossed together. Not ahead, not behind. Side by side. The launch day sun rose slowly over Dallas, casting soft light across Marina's office as the city stirred to life beneath her. She stood by the window, barefoot coffee in hand, wrapped in the kind of calm that only came when every decision had been wrestled with and made. On the table behind her, the final version of the Silvergate X Apex platform brief sat printed and bound. Clean. Honest. Free of the entanglements that nearly unraveled it. They'd rewritten the deal from the inside out. It had taken time, convincing. Some board members had quietly stepped away, but others stayed, new voices, fresh vision, and today it all went live. A soft knock on the door. Dominic stepped in his tie slightly, loosened eyes tired but lit with a kind of peace she hadn't seen before. "No nerves?" he asked. "Not today," Marina replied. He grinned. "You sure the press, the board, the whole market's watching?" "I've had louder rooms," she said, sipping her coffee. "And I've been watched before. This time I'm ready." Dominic stepped beside her. They both looked out at the skyline, the hum of the city just audible through the thick glass. "You built something different, Marina." "We built it," she corrected. He looked at her. You could have walked away. After Brandon. After Savannah. After everything. She turned to face him. That was never the point. I didn't fight to escape the mess. I fought to show we can build something that doesn't require losing yourself. He took that in quietly. Then, with a soft smile, handed her a small, flat box. She raised an eyebrow. "What's this, something you already own?" he said. She opened it slowly. Inside was a sleek, silver nameplate. Marina Langston, founder and chairwoman. She stared at it, heart still. "You never put your name on the door," Dominic said. "I think it's time." She closed the box gently. "I didn't need it then." And now she met his eyes. "Now I'm not afraid to take up space." A pause stretched between them. Then he said, "There's a car waiting downstairs. We've got 30 minutes until the announcement. You go," she said. "I'll be right behind you." He nodded once, then leaned in just enough to press his lips to her temple, brief, intentional grounding. Then he left. And Marina stood alone in her office, watching her reflection in the glass. Not the girl who built herself up to be untouchable, not the woman who endured betrayal behind a perfect smile. Someone else now. Rooted, still fierce, but softer in places. Whole in ways she didn't expect. She glanced back at the desk at the stack of letters she had written the night before. Personal thank you notes. One to Jordan, one to Layla, one to Savannah, and one unsigned tucked into a plain envelope. Addressed only to Brandon. She wouldn't send it, but she needed to write it. Not for him. For her. She picked up her bag, slipped on her shoes, and walked through the halls with quiet confidence. Staff passed her with nods, some still surprised she was approachable now. Others just grateful she stayed. The elevator doors opened, and Marina stepped in. The ground floor was buzzing. Screens showed a countdown. Team members gathered in the open lobby space. News outlets positioned cameras. The kind of chaos she used to dread. Now it was fuel. Dominic spotted her first, and smiled a little relieved, like he'd held his breath until that moment. She joined him just as the timer hit 60 seconds. "You ready for this?" he asked. She nodded. Always. The host from the news outlet stepped forward, microphone ready. "We're here with Marina Langston and Dominic Chen as they prepare to launch a groundbreaking platform, one that's already reshaping how integrity meets innovation in the tech world." Marina smiled. "We're just getting started." The countdown hit 0. The platform went live, applause, flashbulbs, movement. But Marina only felt stillness. A kind of quiet joy that had nothing to do with success and everything to do with self. Later that evening, the crowd had thinned, the cameras disappeared, and the celebration became a soft hum of laughter plates, clinking glasses raised. Marina stepped outside for air. The Texas evening had cooled soft wind brushing against her shoulders. Dominic followed, hands in his pockets. "You good?" he asked. She nodded. I'm better than I've been in years." She smiled at that, then looked out toward the city. "Do you ever think about what we're really doing?" she asked. "All the time. I mean, beyond the product, beyond the team." Dominic stepped beside her. "We're rewriting what it means to build, without losing yourself, without burning out." She turned to him. "Do you think that'll catch on?" He gave a small laugh. "It already has." She looked down, then back up at him. "This thing between us, whatever it is, can we keep letting it grow slowly?" His voice was quiet. "There's no other way I want it." She reached for his hand, held it, no rush, just presence. The past didn't need to be erased. It needed to be respected for what it taught, for what it broke, and for what it made possible. Marina had lost a lot. but she'd found more. And this was only the beginning.